this means in the simplest terms, if we back out up to $10,000 that they've had to do in site design or geotesting, any of that type, we would be requested to reimburse, okay? If we do not change anything on this contract, it's a non-factor. We move it forward to the vote. So this evening, I'm presenting their counter offer to you all with that limitation added in there that it restores their right to recoup out-of-pocket expenses, but it puts a $10,000 limit.
I have a little bit of concern with this, because first of all, we gave them the lot, we're gonna give them a street, we're gonna give them hookups for all the utilities, and then they want us to have a $10,000 liability if something happens.
And in all fairness, we are the entity that caused them to have this down.
Exactly.
Because of the way the
And,
first
and didn't
contract
they
was
lose
signed.
their money from the first thing that they had to withdraw from?
Right, we have not reimbursed anything more.
And that was how many thousand?
They spent $11,000.
$11,000.
Have that money in our pocket.
Pardon?
We have that money in our pocket.
We do not have that money in our pocket.
From the first one?
So we didn't have
No,
anything to
they spent that money,
Oh, gotcha.
okay?
but that's not our fault that they spent that money, Roger.
Ruth, you're entitled to all of your opinions on it. My role is to present contracts to you.
I appreciate
I've done
that.
this 3 times.
2 weeks ago, Susan recommended that we change this contract, and we leave
We
that.
did, and I presented as instructed by this governing body. Your offer was denied. I'm back this evening presenting an offer to you for your consideration for an entity that plans on investing over $500,000 in our community.
Well, I'm a little bit uneasy about it, but I just think we need to send it back as is, and if they wanna come, they can come.
Well, I'd like to clarify that, if you talk about we gave them a free lot, they qualified for a free lot.
It's still a free lot any way you
Yeah, but
look
they
at it.
qualified.
They did, but it's still,
I'm just making that statement, they qualified for a free lot.
but it didn't put any money in our pocket, so it is a free lot.
I move to accept the real estate contract with CDC Marion LLC with the revisions to sellers liabilities in section 13 limiting the potential liabilities for cancellation of contract to $10,000 to the city. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any further discussion?
Do we not wanna keep this or maybe table it until our new attorney comes aboard and
We
ask
got,
him to review it?
we got a motion on the floor, we need to vote on it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0. I'm not sorry, 4-1. Number 17, ditch diggers water line pay estimate number 10.
This is just the, pay estimate for the work that was completed, in the amount of $105,363.47.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve pay estimate number 10. To ditch diggers.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, those opposed, same sign. Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you.
Number 18, approval of CDBG drawdown request number 10. Tiffany?
Based on the approval of that ditch diggers invoice, we have our CDBG request. I can get to you. Thank you, Roger. It is in the amount of $15,000.
Any questions, council? I move to approve CDBG grant drawdown request number 10, the amount of $15,000. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Number 20, water plant upgrade and discussion. Jim,
That's
Jason.
Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
get some KDHE money to pay for it.
Yeah, approval of KDHE SRS loan drawdown number 11.
The drawdown number 11 for KDHE is, in the total amount of $90,363.47. And that's for the remaining, ditch diggers invoice.
Okay, any questions for council?
It's getting close.
Yep.
We are.
I move to approve KDHE state revolving fund drawdown request number 11. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Now number 20, water plant update and discussion. Jim Dixon.
We're gonna have about, visiting about, several ongoing equipment situations we wanna go over and some upgrades and stuff. Jason's gonna give you a little bit of a rundown how the plant works real quick, and then
And this is just kind of a quick overview, and every treatment plant is different, and keep that in mind as we talk through some of these, they are a little different, and I'll try to point where we're at, where we are different. But as you can see, our raw water source is the Marion Reservoir, and it first comes in through our little diagram, and it goes into an ozone filter basin, which is the pre-treatment basin. And as you follow along, it just kind of describes what's happening in each of the processes. Again, ours is just a little different, and after it goes through the flash mixer, it kind of goes down through our clarifier basins, which would be here. It's gonna come in, we've got another ozone basin out here before it goes into our filters and then finishes the process. We had chlorine and ammonia before it goes to the distribution system. So that's kind of where the water goes from the reservoir through our system. And kind of our process, which I kind of pointed out there, again, is similar to what you see here, but it's a little different. Again, the water comes in and it's hit with the ozone first, comes into our building through the rapid mixing process. That's where we're adding our chemicals, our flocculants, our lime, and so on, and goes into a flocculator basin. And before it comes back, after it goes through the flocculator, again, that's where it starts the process. If you look back the other page, you see the clarifier basin. So it's gonna go through the clarifier basins, and there's two of them, and then through the ozone again, through the filters, and then that's where it's hit with the free chlorine and ammonia before it goes into the distribution system. So kind of what wanted to visit with you guys about this evening is some of the things that we're having issues with there, and that is in our clarifier basins, our settling basins. You know, the equipment was installed in 1962, the plant was operational in 64. As you can see in this picture, this is a vent shaft where just usage and wear on the chains and sprocket have slipped enough to bend basically it's a 2-inch solid steel piece of pipe. And so when we want to use that equipment, it's not available. So you can see here in this picture, it's also a really good picture here in your packet. The clarifier basin, so your flock, you're building your flock, and then the flock attaches to all the gunk in the water. And that's wanting to drop out into your clarifier basin. So each of the clarifiers has a big drag system in there. And when I talk about a drag, I mean, it's literally a drag. There's boards that run across the clarifiers in there that drag all of the dropped out sediment. You have down where those ladders are, there's actually pits in there that sediment's dragged to, and then we can open up open up some valves, and that allows that sedimentation to come out of there. When things are working like they're supposed to, you never see this because you're constantly running the plant, but we're now having to shut down and drain both of the clarifiers to get into this to work on it. Takes about 5 to 6 hours to drain the clarifiers. Then it takes an additional 6 to 8 to fill them back up to where we can run the plant again.
And you can see the discoloration, that's the sediment.
Yeah,
Before
where-
we clean it.
So that line there is a good visual, kind of right there is the top of the clarifier, and that's, probably 8 foot up the wall, which is, and dealing with, the byproducts from the blue-green algae, you do not want anything in your clarifiers at all. You want that stuff gone. Again, I think throughout the years, these boards were able to be replaced, but, and again, if you could see it, if these pictures were a little clearer or firsthand, but these chains, there's very little left of them. So what we've been talking about doing and looking at is, purchasing a hydrovac that will help us be able to maintain operation of the plant. Instead of having to shut down and go through that whole process, we'd be able to use this to suck out the majority of.
And more often, we can do it without shutting down for a whole day. We can do it more frequently, monthly maybe, before it gets so deep.
And, Tim looked into these and was able to find this one for around that. So that's kind of what we were thinking of to help getting this by. Gonna jump right into the ozone equipment. Again, we're talking about stuff that is kind of like your laptops or your computers, guys. This stuff was installed 15 years ago. This is an interesting one to get into. Each of the generators, so there's 2 generators that look like this, and they each have a vessel that look like this. And inside here is where the actual ozone is being created. There's dielectroids that run in here, and they look like teeny tiny little flashlights in there when it's operational and working properly. We have 1 generator, number 2, which is totally inoperable at the moment. Spent some time with several different folks on getting that fixed, and it's a nightmare. Our equipment is Mitsubishi. There's a whole bunch of proprietary issues that we're running into, and legalities with that. So we're looking into things to do there, and also with this whole process, what we'd have to do is this vessel here would have to be removed. A company that I've been in touch with that can work on this stuff is out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and the gentleman's a very nice man. And anyway, we'd have to tear this down, ship it to Cincinnati. From Cincinnati, they go in and do what they can do inside the vessel itself, cleaning, preparing it to ship then overseas to Japan. Once it gets to Japan and Mitsubishi's facility, they'll have it, they'll do what they need to do to it, they'll repair the dielectroids, basically replace it with new ones. This whole process, when I started this 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, they were throwing around $120,000. The last conversation I had with Dr. Atur Rahman a week and a half ago, we're now talking $192,000 plus. Without the guarantee of, you guys have all turned on the TV and seen what's going on in the ports. We don't know, you know, we don't know if we put this, you know, get it to Ohio, they do what they do to it, and it gets shipped, are we ever gonna see it again?
You're just talking about repairs,
Yeah.
You're not talking about shipping costs, all that.
And
Well, the 192 includes everything, but there's more to it. So if we're lucky enough to get it over there and get it back, then it goes to Cincinnati again. One of Mitsubishi's technicians from Japan has to quarantine for 2 weeks, which we get to pay for in Japan. Then he comes to Cincinnati, quarantines again for another 2 weeks, which we get to pay for. Then he'll come to Marion with Dr. Tour and his technician, Steve, I can't think of Steve's last name, but, anyway, then they would come, reinstall, and hopefully get it operational. In the meantime, I've talked to some different folks with rural water, and just kind of looking for a backup system. And, chlorine dioxide is something that's come up, you know, for a system our size that we might be able to put in place, cause, you know, right now we're running on one generator that we really, you know, we don't know how long that generator is gonna last.
Well, mind you too, that it might take 12 to 18 months turnaround time on this too.
Yeah, just within the shipping involved there, you know, that's the unforeseen there, is, you know, again, you put it on a boat, and, you know, I mean, I'm reading and hearing things where these guys are getting upset that they're not getting paid, you know, with their vessels, and they're just dropping their cargo out in the ocean, you know, who's to say, you know, ours doesn't get put on one of those, but it's just something to be thinking about as we're talking about some improvements and things we can do differently at the plant.
Just as a comparison, what would a replacement be?
Well, it would be like the chlorine dioxide. We'd have to get set up to put that in, that would kinda take care of what the ozone would do.
Right, for a backup system, and replacing the skids, cause that's what they would have to do, is go in, to the building on whatever picture that was, that kind of showed the overview of the skids, and they would have to replace that entire thing. So it wouldn't be just the vessel, it would be the entire cabinet, which I don't really have a good, well, there's kind of a good picture of the cabinet, but on the other side of the cabinet is a PLC. So if we replace that, we would wanna go away from Mitsubishi. But again, ozone was something that everybody jumped up about and down about, you know, 10, 15 years ago, but it never really took off. So there's not a lot of resources. I was made aware, 2 weeks ago, Rick and I were at a class in Harrington, and they are putting in a new plant, and they are going with ozone. However, none of their operators were there, so I'm not sure who they went with to produce ozone. So that's another one that we can kind of
It
look
seems like to
into.
me, I remember Council Grove was one of the things with those.
They had,
When we were researching it at that time, I know they were a plant that we went and talked to.
Council Grove has it, Emporia is a good one. I visited with their manager.
Now, who are they utilizing?
They went with Xylem, and what happened with Mitsubishi, when Mitsubishi decided they were no longer gonna do it in the United States, all the guys from Mitsubishi left and created Xylem. And that's who was helping us kind of through the first part of this until they realized the problems we have, they're not allowed to fix.
Not allowed to what?
Allowed to fix, they
Oh,
don't have the
okay.
rights to get into some of the computer programming that are on each of the generators.
All that went overseas.
Chris, if I may clarify your question, you're asking replacement ozone unit between $1.2 million and $1.6 million per generator. Are the preliminary numbers as I'm talking, trying to find domestic manufacturers and servicers of this type of equipment.
Do we have any kind of estimate about chlorine dioxide if we would switch to that?
Yeah, I think Tim's gonna get into that.
I'll
part.
get into that here.
Alright.
Yeah.
Also, again, you know, around that time that we put in the ozone, which was what, 06, 07, 08, kind of in those years, Hawk Instrumental Company is who we use and who we had to do a lot of that work inside the plant. All of these instrument and controllers are now obsolete. If any of these fail, I have to either come up with a way to make them work or hope that in Loveland, Colorado, in their warehouse, they have a part that I can swap it out with.
They control all of the chemical injection process, the heavy metals for the flocculation process, the treatments to keep the acidity level correct on the water, so the proper actions occur, all of that.
And these down here are your turb readers, they're reading the turbidity levels coming out of each of the filters in a combined level, which is all stuff KDHE and the EPA make us monitor as we're running the plant. These CL17s, there's actually four of these in our plant. One does the POE, which is your point of entry, and the other one does, your free chlorine, and then you've got an ammonia and a total chlorine. And these are the kind of the heart and soul of the chemical process. You know, they help you determine what adjustments to make to your chemical feed, you know. So, and then inside of each of these, and I should have taken a picture with it open so you could see what it looked like, but there's several different components in there that can go bad, and it's now becoming a problem to get replacements. And that's kind of what I have in a nutshell.
And then, you know, remember, I mean, the operator is still producing quality water, all of that's not a problem there. We're just, if for some reason the other ozone goes down, we don't have an immediate backup. And, I believe there's a grace period you can get by to do some other things, but even
If the ozone failed completely and we weren't able to produce ozone to use as our primary disinfectant for the day, we would be allowed by KDHE, I think, up to 60 days to run on for free chlorine, which means then we would just be double, triple dosing it with chlorine. And the problem that creates is your disinfectant byproducts, and then you get into a whole nother thing with KDHE, EPA.
And then, you know, like he covered some of the things, you know, like keeping that sediment down more often helps him, less chemicals. And, you know, we went from a free chlorine to an ozone treatment originally. And that gets to green algae. I guess really that we did some checking, like the instruments is looking at like 45,000. The chlorine dioxide setup around 30, and the back would be 62. But I guess for the year we had $150,000 budgeted to refurbish the generator, which obviously we ain't going to get done. With the COVID impacts and challenges, that goal played a role in not accomplishing it either. But however, if we could purchase the backup chlorine dioxide treatment system for the sanitation, the vac trailer, them three things, we could redistribute the money to go along with that. That's what we're kind of asking, if you have your permission to proceed with, you know, this solution, get a backup deal, and just go that route. So
you're talking about purchasing the chlorine dioxide
yeah, it'd be
and the trailer?
Yeah, it'd be the
the
three,
back trailer.
three things there.
Okay.
You know, cause otherwise the money just go on, at least maybe we could have a backup system that if the ozone does lay down on us, we have our backup system in place. And we are still working with Rural Water to, you know, on them chain drags, try to, down the road, try to figure that, you know, what we, if we could get them going back again. So, yes, I mean, really, that's pretty much it. I mean, if we can get, Roger has
Have
any-
you talked to Charlie Holland? Has he had any ideas on vacuum trucks?
that's it.
I mean, what the picture showed?
Well, that's,
This is.
You and Charlie looked at a couple different
well,
ones.
yeah, we actually looked, he went with me when we looked at them. Are you thinking a bigger truck?
No, is it a brand new one?
Yes.
What you talking about?
Yeah, cause he recommended not buying a used one,
Okay.
cause they're usually trouble. I mean,
Okay,
And that-
Charlie helped, excuse me.
No.
Charlie helped figuring out what size would be the best for this, which is a 3-inch hose. And with that, if you're familiar with the plant, what they showed you with the drag chain system, that's what's under those great big metal covers that are out behind the main plant. They know from when we clean these where, because of the circulation of the water and where the greatest deposits occur. With the back trailer, they'll basically install a 4-inch portal directly above that area. Then, on a monthly basis, or when it's needed, they'll be able to take this 3-inch drop from that, drop it right down into that pile of sediment, and remove it without having to shut down the plant. Drain everything, and part of the pressure washer that went to the 6 different departments, our old one went down when they did this last cleanup with the pictures. So it's a piece that we have to have because they have to wash it out. Where you're seeing the 2 different colors on the wall, the water that's coming from the reservoir is what's called in that muddy brown. And the sediment stains the wall the white because it's pre-treated with the ozone coming in, then the heavy, it's called heavy metals, but it's technically not hazardous to anyone. That's what causes the sediment in the water to get heavier, fall to the bottom. And what they need to do is be able to get it out of there. So they found that as a way. Ozone 1 continues to work. We've had no violations. That was part of our water line project. We couldn't even get the big grant from the government because the guys managed to keep everything moving the way it is. But what Jason's asking for $30,000, he can go to chlorine dioxide